Staff Sergeant James Cooper stood in front of his bathroom mirror, running his fingers through his short military haircut. It had been exactly 3 months since he returned from his third tour in Afghanistan, and civilian life still felt strange to him. His reflection showed a man in his early 30s, fit and alert, with calm brown eyes that had seen more than most people would in a lifetime. He adjusted the black t-shirt he had chosen for the evening, simple and clean, just like he preferred things. The ticket to the heavy metal concert lay on his bedside table, a gift from his younger sister Sarah. "You need to get out more, James," she had told him. "You can't spend all your time at the training facility." She wasn't wrong. As a combat instructor at Fort Bragg, Cooper spent most of his days teaching young soldiers the art of hand-to-hand combat. It was what he knew best, what he excelled at, but sometimes he forgot there was a world outside the military. The downtown music hall was already buzzing with activity when Cooper pulled into the parking lot in his dark blue pickup truck. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the crowd gathered outside. Rock music leaked through the building's walls, the heavy bass vibrating in the cool evening air. Cooper couldn't help but notice how different this was from his usual evening routine of workout, dinner, and training manuals. As he walked toward the entrance, the first signs of trouble caught his attention. A group of bikers, their leather vests decorated with patches and studs, were clustered near the front doors. Their motorcycles, chrome gleaming under the street lights, were parked in a row nearby. Cooper's trained eye counted 7 of them, all big guys, most with beards and tattoos. They were passing around a bottle in a brown paper bag and getting louder by the minute. 2 young women walked past the group, and the bikers made crude comments, laughing among themselves. One of them, a particularly large man with a snake tattoo crawling up his neck, reached out to grab one woman's arm, but she quickly pulled away. Cooper felt his jaw tighten, but he maintained his discipline. Years of military training had taught him when to act and when to observe. For now, the situation didn't require his intervention. The security guard at the entrance, a skinny kid who couldn't have been more than 20, was clearly nervous about the biker's presence. He checked Cooper's ticket with shaking hands, his eyes darting between the soldier and the rowdy group. Cooper gave him a reassuring nod as he passed through the doors. Inside, the music was even louder. The opening act hadn't started yet, but the pre-show music filled the space with heavy guitar riffs and thundering drums. Cooper made his way through the growing crowd, naturally scanning his surroundings out of habit. He noted the exits, the position of security personnel, and the general layout of the venue. It wasn't that he expected trouble. It was just what he did, what had been drilled into him through years of service. Finding a good spot near the middle of the hall, Cooper settled in to enjoy the show. He could still see the bikers through the glass doors, their loud voices carrying over the music whenever someone entered or left. A few more security guards had gathered near the entrance, but they seemed hesitant to confront the group. Sarah had been right. He needed this. Despite the rowdy bikers outside, Cooper felt something inside him starting to relax. The familiar tension in his shoulders, a constant companion since his last tour, began to ease slightly. The crowd around him was diverse. Teenagers with colorful hair, middle-aged men in band t-shirts, couples holding hands, all united by their love of music. It reminded him of why he had served, to protect people's right to enjoy simple pleasures like this. Little did Cooper know that his evening of relaxation was about to turn into something very different. As the opening act prepared to take the stage, he noticed the biker group finally making their way inside, their rowdy behavior already drawing annoyed looks from other concertgoers. Cooper took a slow, deep breath. His instincts told him this night might require more than just passive observation, but for now, he would do what he did best: stay alert, stay calm, and hope for the best. The opening act, a local heavy metal band, had just started their first song when the trouble began. The 7 bikers pushed their way through the crowd, shoving people aside like bowling pins. Their leader, the one with the snake tattoo, seemed to take special pleasure in disrupting everyone's evening. The smell of alcohol followed them as they moved through the concert hall. Cooper watched from his spot as they created a circle of chaos around them. Most concertgoers tried to move away, but in the packed venue, there wasn't much room to escape. The music was loud, but the angry voices and scared yelps of people being pushed around still carried through the heavy guitar riffs. A young couple stood near Cooper, trying to enjoy the show. The girl, probably in her early 20s, wore a band t-shirt and held her boyfriend's hand tightly. They were clearly uncomfortable with the bikers' behavior or were trying their best to ignore it. Cooper noticed how they kept glancing nervously over their shoulders. The snake-tattooed leader, who others called Snake, spotted the couple. With a cruel smile, he nudged one of his friends and started moving toward them. Cooper's muscles tensed, but he remained still, watching. Years of combat experience had taught him to read situations before acting. The boyfriend saw them coming and tried to position himself between the bikers and his girlfriend. "Hey, pretty lady," Snake shouted over the music, his words slightly slurred. "Why don't you come hang with real men instead of this kid?" His friends laughed, forming a half circle around the couple. The boyfriend, though scared, stood his ground. "Leave us alone," he said, his voice shaking but determined. Snake didn't like that answer. He reached out and shoved the boyfriend hard, sending him stumbling into other concertgoers. The girlfriend screamed as she was pushed in Cooper's direction. Without thinking, Cooper stepped forward and caught her before she could fall. The music suddenly stopped between songs, making the situation even more tense. "Thank you," the girl whispered, clearly frightened. Cooper helped her stand straight and made sure she was steady on her feet. Her boyfriend rushed back to her side, checking if she was okay. The crowd around them had grown quiet, sensing the growing tension. Cooper turned to face Snake and his group. "There's no need for this," he said calmly but firmly. "Everyone's here to enjoy the show." His voice was level, but his eyes were alert, taking in every detail of the situation. He noticed how the bikers had positioned themselves, how Snake's right hand was clenched into a fist, how two of them were trying to circle behind him. Snake looked Cooper up and down, noticing his military bearing and confident stance. Well, he sneered. "Looks like we got ourselves a Boy Scout." The other bikers laughed on cue, spreading out to form a wider circle. Cooper noticed a security guard at the edge of the crowd talking urgently into his radio, but he knew help wouldn't arrive in time if things got ugly. "I'd rather be a Boy Scout than a bully," Cooper replied evenly. He kept his hands relaxed at his sides, but his body was ready to move in any direction. The young couple had managed to slip away, and other concertgoers were quickly creating space around the developing confrontation. Snake's face darkened with anger. He wasn't used to people standing up to him, especially not in such a calm manner. "You trying to be some kind of hero, military boy?" he growled, taking a step closer. Cooper could smell the cheap whiskey on his breath. "Because I promise you, that's a bad idea." The other bikers moved closer too, their boots heavy on the concert hall floor. Cooper remained perfectly still, his training kicking in as he assessed each threat. He knew their types, bullies who relied on numbers and intimidation. He had faced worse in Afghanistan, but he still hoped to avoid violence. "Last chance," Cooper said quietly, his words carrying despite the resumed music. "Go back to enjoying the show, and we can all have a good night." But he could see in Snake's bloodshot eyes that things were about to get much worse. The first band finished their song, and in that brief moment of silence, Snake made a decision that he would soon regret. The concert hall lights came up for intermission, creating a perfect arena for what was about to unfold. Snake and his 6 followers had Cooper completely surrounded now, forming a tight circle that blocked any easy escape route. The crowd of concertgoers backed away, forming a larger circle around them, their faces a mix of concern and morbid curiosity. "You know what really bugs me about military types like you?" Snake said, cracking his knuckles loudly. "You think you're better than everyone else." He was over 6 feet tall and probably weighed close to 300 pounds, most of it muscle beneath a layer of beer fat. His snake tattoo seemed to move as he talked, its forked tongue reaching up toward his ear. Cooper remained silent, his eyes constantly moving, taking in every detail. He noticed how 2 of the bikers kept touching their pockets, probably carrying knives. Another wore brass knuckles that glinted under the bright lights. These weren't just random troublemakers, they were prepared for violence. "Nothing to say now, soldier boy," taunted one of the other bikers, a skinny man with a long gray beard. "Not so brave when you're outnumbered, huh?" He moved closer, trying to provoke a reaction. Cooper could smell stale cigarettes and cheap beer on his breath. The venue's security guards hovered at the edge of the crowd, looking uncertain. They were mainly teenage kids working part-time jobs, completely unprepared for this kind of situation. One of them was frantically talking on his phone, probably calling the police, but Cooper knew that help wouldn't arrive in time. "Last warning," Cooper said calmly, his voice carrying across the now quiet space. "Walk away now, and we can all enjoy the rest of the concert." He kept his hands visible but ready, his feet shoulder-width apart in a neutral stance that would allow him to move in any direction. Snake laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the walls. "Oh, we're going to enjoy ourselves all right." He looked at his friends, giving them silent signals. "Boys, looks like we need to teach this military punk some manners. Show him how we handle this type in our town." The bikers started closing in, their circle getting tighter. Cooper noticed how they moved. They had done this before, probably many times. They were used to overwhelming their targets with numbers, but their movements were sloppy, uncoordinated. Nothing like the trained fighters he dealt with every day. Someone in the crowd shouted, "Leave him alone," but was quickly hushed by others. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Cooper could hear his own heartbeat, steady and calm, just like during his combat deployments. "You know what's funny?" Cooper said, his voice still eerily calm. "In all my years of training soldiers, I teach them one important lesson first." He looked directly at Snake, his eyes showing no fear. "Never underestimate your opponent." Snake's face twisted with rage. He wasn't used to his victims being so calm, so unafraid. "Shut your mouth," he roared, his face turning red. "I put guys twice your size in the hospital." Cooper didn't flinch. "Another lesson we teach. Size doesn't matter as much as skill." His words seemed to float in the air between them, carrying a weight that made even some of the bikers shift uncomfortably. The skinny biker with the gray beard lost his patience first. "Enough talking," he snarled, reaching for something in his back pocket. The movement was all Cooper needed to see. The situation was about to turn violent. Time seemed to slow down as Cooper made his final mental preparations. He had been in worse situations in Afghanistan, faced more dangerous opponents. These men were bullies, used to easy victories over scared victims. They had no idea they were about to face someone with over a decade of combat experience and hundreds of hours teaching hand-to-hand combat to special forces. Snake raised his massive fist, a twisted smile on his face. "Get him!" he roared, and the bikers moved in for what they thought would be an easy fight. But as the first punch was thrown, Cooper's expression changed from calm to focused, and the real lesson was about to begin. Snake's first punch came like a freight train, his massive fist aimed straight at Cooper's face. But Cooper wasn't there anymore. With a slight tilt of his head, he let the punch sail past his ear. The movement was so smooth, so effortless, that it took Snake a full second to realize he had missed. "What the?" Snake's surprise was cut short as Cooper grabbed his extended arm. Using Snake's own momentum, Cooper pulled him forward while stepping aside. The big biker stumbled, nearly falling into one of his friends. The crowd gasped at how easily their leader had been made to look foolish. Two more bikers rushed in from different directions. The skinny one with the gray beard came from the left, while a heavy-set man with a skull tattoo charged from the right. Cooper's military training kicked in automatically. Time seemed to slow down as his combat instincts took over. He ducked under Graybeard's wild swing and stepped into his space. A quick strike to the solar plexus left the skinny biker gasping for air. Without pausing, Cooper pivoted away from Skull Tattoo's charge, letting the bigger man's momentum carry him forward. A precise leg sweep sent him crashing to the floor. "Get him! All of you!" Snake roared, his face red with rage and embarrassment. The remaining bikers moved in together, thinking their numbers would overwhelm Cooper. They had never faced anyone like him before. Cooper's movements were efficient and purposeful, nothing like the wild brawling the bikers were used to. Every step, every block, every strike came from years of training and real combat experience. He didn't waste energy on flashy moves or powerful hits. Instead, he used their own strength against them. A biker with brass knuckles swung at Cooper's head. Cooper caught the man's wrist mid-swing, twisted it slightly, and used the momentum to send him spinning into another attacker. Both men went down in a tangle of limbs and cursing. Snake tried to grab Cooper from behind, but Cooper was ready. He dropped his weight and turned, using a basic military throw that sent the much larger man flying over his hip. Snake landed hard on his back, the impact forcing the air from his lungs. The sound of his body hitting the floor echoed through the concert hall. The remaining bikers hesitated, suddenly unsure. They had expected an easy fight, 7 against 1. Instead, half their group was already on the ground, and Cooper hadn't even broken a sweat. He stood calmly in a ready stance, his breathing steady and controlled. "Stay back," Cooper warned them, his voice firm but not angry. "You can still walk away from this." His eyes stayed alert, watching for any movement, any sign of weapons being drawn. The combat instructor in him noticed their sloppy stances, their telegraphed moves, their lack of proper training. One biker reached for his pocket, probably going for a knife. Cooper closed the distance before the weapon could come out. A quick strike to the wrist made fingers go numb, and the knife clattered to the floor without ever being drawn. A follow-up push sent the man stumbling backward into the crowd. Snake was getting back to his feet, fury and disbelief fighting for control of his face. "You're dead, military boy," he growled, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. His eyes darted between Cooper and his fallen friends, who were slowly getting up, groaning in pain. The crowd had grown larger, with people holding up phones to record the fight. Security guards were finally pushing their way through, but they moved cautiously, unsure of how to handle the situation. The concert hall manager appeared, talking urgently into a radio. Cooper maintained his defensive stance, ready for anything. In less than a minute, he had shown these bullies the difference between street fighting and military combat training. But he knew the situation wasn't over yet. Snake's pride had been hurt worse than his body, and wounded pride often led men like him to make dangerous decisions. The tension in the air was electric as everyone waited to see what would happen next. Would the bikers accept their defeat, or would they force this fight to continue? Cooper's calm expression never changed as he prepared himself for either outcome. Snake's anger finally overcame his common sense. With a roar of rage, he charged at Cooper like an enraged bull, his boots heavy on the concert hall floor. Behind him, his remaining friends spread out, trying to trap Cooper in a corner. They thought they had him now, with nowhere to run. But Cooper had been in far worse situations during his tours in Afghanistan. Compared to fighting trained insurgents in narrow alleys, this was almost like one of his training sessions. He waited until Snake was almost on him, then moved with the speed and precision that only came from years of combat experience. As Snake lunged forward, Cooper stepped slightly to the side and used the biker's own momentum against him. A quick sweep of his leg combined with a precise push sent Snake crashing into the wall behind him. The impact was so hard that one of the concert posters fell to the ground. "Boss!" shouted one of the bikers, the one with brass knuckles who was still nursing his twisted wrist. He tried to rush Cooper from behind, but Cooper was already moving. Without even looking back, he dropped and rolled, causing the biker to trip over him. The man flew forward and landed hard on his face, his brass knuckles skittering across the floor. The skinny biker with the gray beard had caught his breath and pulled out a small knife. The blade glinted under the bright lights as he approached more cautiously than before. Cooper's eyes narrowed as he focused on this new threat. In the military, they had specific training for knife attacks. "Drop the knife," Cooper warned, his voice carrying across the now silent concert hall. "You don't want to make this worse." But the skinny biker was beyond listening. He slashed wildly at Cooper, the blade cutting through empty air as Cooper easily stepped back. The crowd gasped as the knife came dangerously close to Cooper's chest, but he remained calm. When the biker lunged forward with another strike, Cooper's hand shot out like lightning. He grabbed the man's wrist, twisted sharply, and applied pressure to a specific point that made the biker's fingers open involuntarily. The knife clattered to the ground. Before anyone could react, Cooper kicked the knife away and twisted the biker's arm behind his back in a perfect control hold. The skinny man yelped in pain and surprise, unable to move without hurting himself. Cooper had used this same hold hundreds of times while training new soldiers. Snake was getting up again, but much slower this time. His face was a mess of anger and embarrassment as he watched his friends being taken apart one by one. 2 of his gang were still on the ground. One was trapped in Cooper's hold, and the others were backing away with scared looks on their faces. "Stand down," Cooper said firmly, his military command voice cutting through the tension. "It's over." He released the skinny biker with a small push, sending him stumbling toward his friends. The man rubbed his wrist, looking at Cooper with a mixture of fear and respect. Security cameras above caught everything, their red lights blinking as they recorded the entire incident. The concert hall's security team had finally gathered enough courage to move closer, though they stayed at a safe distance. Several people in the crowd were still recording with their phones, capturing how one man had systematically dismantled a gang of violent bikers. Snake looked around at his defeated gang, his tough guy image completely shattered. His snake tattoo seemed less threatening now as sweat dripped down his neck. The other bikers were looking to him, waiting to see what he would do, but their usual confidence was gone. Cooper stood ready but relaxed, his breathing barely elevated. He hadn't even taken off his jacket during the entire fight. To the amazed crowd, he looked more like a martial arts instructor finishing a demonstration than someone who had just fought off 7 attackers. The tables had completely turned. The bullies who had terrorized the concert hall earlier now looked unsure and afraid. Snake had to make a decision: accept defeat or risk further embarrassment. The answer would come soon, but one thing was already clear: they had chosen the wrong person to mess with tonight. The concert hall had become eerily quiet except for the groans of fallen bikers and the murmur of the watching crowd. Snake stood there, his massive frame heaving with exhaustion and anger, trying to decide what to do next. His reputation was in ruins, and everyone could see it. "Listen up," Cooper said calmly, addressing all the bikers. "I'm going to explain what happens next." His voice carried the natural authority of someone used to commanding troops. "You have 2 choices. Either leave quietly right now, or wait for the police to arrive. They're probably already on their way." As if to confirm his words, the distant sound of police sirens could be heard approaching the venue. The concert hall manager, a middle-aged man in a black polo shirt, had finally worked up the courage to step forward. "The police will be here in 2 minutes," he announced, holding up his phone, "and we have everything on our security cameras." Snake looked at his fallen gang members. The one with brass knuckles was sitting on the floor, holding his bloody nose. The skinny one with the gray beard was still rubbing his twisted wrist. 2 others were helping each other stand up, and the rest were backing away, wanting no more part of this fight. "This isn't over," Snake growled, but his voice lacked conviction. His eyes darted between Cooper, the approaching security guards, and the exit doors. The sirens were getting louder. Cooper remained in his relaxed but ready stance. "Actually, it is over," he said firmly. "You came here looking for trouble. You found it. Now you have about 60 seconds to leave before those police officers walk through those doors." The security cameras continued recording as Snake faced the hardest choice of his night. His reputation as a tough guy was already destroyed. Everyone had seen him thrown around like a beginner in a martial arts class. The phones in the crowd had recorded everything, and he knew the videos would be all over social media by morning. "Let's go," one of the less injured bikers said quietly to Snake. "It's not worth getting arrested." He was already backing toward the exit, and others were following his lead. The crowd parted to let them through, some people still holding their phones up to record the bikers' retreat. Snake's face twisted with rage and humiliation. "This ain't finished, military boy," he spat out, but even he knew they were empty words. Cooper had beaten him and his entire gang without even breaking a sweat. Worse, he had made them look like amateur fighters in front of a huge crowd. "Yes, it is finished," Cooper replied calmly. "And if you're smart, you won't come back." His eyes were steady, showing no fear or anger, just the professional focus of someone who had handled much worse situations. The young security guards finally moved in, their confidence restored now that the fight was over. They surrounded the bikers, pointing toward the exit. The concert hall manager was on his phone again, probably talking to the police, giving them descriptions of Snake and his gang. One by one, the bikers limped toward the exit. Snake was the last to move, his face a mask of defeated pride. The snake tattoo on his neck seemed to have lost its menacing appearance, now looking more like a reminder of his humiliation. As they reached the doors, the first police car pulled into the parking lot, its lights flashing. The bikers quickened their pace, heading for their motorcycles. Nobody wanted to explain to the police what had happened, especially with all the video evidence against them. The crowd began to cheer as the bikers left. Several people patted Cooper on the back, congratulating him. The young couple he had helped earlier smiled at him gratefully from the crowd. The concert hall manager approached, looking both relieved and impressed. "Sir," the manager said to Cooper, "I can't thank you enough. Those guys have been causing trouble here for months, but nobody could handle them." He glanced at the security cameras. Would you be willing to give a statement to the police? We'd like to make sure those thugs can't come back here again." Cooper nodded, his professional demeanor never wavering. The situation had been resolved exactly as his military training had taught him, with minimum force necessary and no serious injuries. As the police officers entered the building, Cooper prepared to explain how a peaceful evening at a concert had turned into an impromptu demonstration of military combat training. 2 police cars were now parked outside the concert hall, their blue and red lights flashing through the glass doors. Inside, Officer Sarah Martinez sat across from Cooper in the manager's office, taking his statement. Her partner, Officer Thompson, was reviewing the security camera footage on the manager's computer. "So you're telling me you took on 7 of them by yourself?" Officer Martinez asked, looking up from her notepad. She was a veteran cop who had dealt with Snake's gang before, but had never been able to catch them in the act. Cooper nodded modestly. "Yes, ma'am. I'm a combat instructor at Fort Bragg. Hand-to-hand combat is what I teach." He spoke clearly and professionally, explaining how the bikers had been harassing other concertgoers and how he had tried multiple times to avoid the fight. The concert hall manager, Mr. Roberts, stood nearby, nodding eagerly. "It was incredible," he added. "He gave them every chance to walk away. When they wouldn't listen, he handled them like... He struggled to find the right words. Like a professional, Officer Thompson finished, looking up from the security footage. "I've never seen anything this clean. Every move was defensive, minimal force used, no excessive violence." He rewound the video to watch a particular sequence again. This should be shown at the police academy. Outside the office, a small crowd had gathered. The young couple Cooper had helped wanted to give statements too. Other witnesses were showing their phone recordings to another police officer who had arrived. The videos were already starting to appear on social media. "We've had trouble with Snake and his gang for months," Officer Martinez explained, writing down Cooper's military ID number. "But they usually ride away before we can catch them. This time, though," she smiled, holding up a plastic evidence bag containing the brass knuckles that one of the bikers had dropped. Mr. Roberts stepped forward nervously. "Will they come back for revenge?" he asked. It was clearly something that had been worrying him. They threatened other people before. Officer Thompson shook his head. "Not likely. Look at this." He turned the computer screen to show them all. The footage showed Snake and his gang speeding away on their motorcycles, but not before the cameras caught clear images of their faces and their license plates. Plus, Officer Martinez added, "With all these videos online, their reputation is finished. Nobody's going to take them seriously after seeing them get taken apart by one man." She closed her notebook and stood up. "Mr. Cooper, would you be willing to come down to the station tomorrow to sign an official statement?" Cooper agreed, and as they wrapped up the paperwork, Mr. Roberts cleared his throat. "Mr. Cooper," he said, pulling something from his desk drawer, "we'd like to give you these." He held out several VIP concert tickets. "They're good for any show here for the next year. It's the least we can do." The young security guards who had been too scared to act earlier were now gathered around Officer Thompson, watching the security footage in amazement. One of them, the skinny kid from the entrance, was taking notes on his phone, clearly impressed by Cooper's techniques. As they left the office, the crowd broke into applause. Cooper looked embarrassed by the attention, but accepted the handshakes and thank yous graciously. Several people asked to take photos with him, but he politely declined, staying true to his modest nature. The concert's main act was about to begin, the delay caused by the incident almost forgotten. The atmosphere in the hall had completely changed. Where there had been tension and fear earlier, now there was a sense of relief and celebration. "One more thing," Officer Martinez said, catching Cooper before he returned to the concert floor. "The chief would like to know if you'd be interested in teaching a self-defense seminar at the police academy, after seeing this footage." She gestured at the computer screen still showing the security video. Cooper smiled slightly. "I'd be happy to help," he said. "It's what I do." He checked his watch. There was still time to enjoy the main act. As he walked back to his spot in the crowd, people made way for him respectfully. The night hadn't gone as planned, but in many ways, it had turned out better than expected. Word spread quickly through the local biker community over the next few days. The videos of Snake and his gang being defeated by a single soldier had gone viral on social media. Some clips had hundreds of thousands of views, with comments pouring in from martial arts experts and military veterans praising Cooper's technique and restraint. Snake's reputation was completely destroyed. His gang broke apart within a week. Two members turned themselves in to the police, hoping for lighter punishment after Officer Martinez found records of their involvement in other crimes. The others stopped wearing their gang patches and avoided being seen in public. At Fort Bragg, Cooper's commanding officer called him into his office after seeing the videos online. Cooper worried he might be in trouble, but instead, the officer congratulated him. "That's exactly how we train our soldiers to handle civilian situations," he said proudly. "Minimum force, maximum effectiveness." The local news wanted to interview Cooper, but he politely declined. He didn't want attention or fame. When his sister Sarah called him about the incident, having recognized him in the viral videos, he simply told her, "The concert was interesting. Thanks for the ticket." A week later, Cooper kept his promise to help the police. He visited the police academy to teach a self-defense seminar. Officer Martinez and 20 other officers attended, eager to learn from the soldier who had single-handedly taken down the notorious biker gang. The most important thing, Cooper explained to the officers, is to stay calm and use your training. Size doesn't matter as much as skill, and always try to avoid the fight if you can. He demonstrated some of the simple but effective moves he had used against the bikers. The downtown music hall changed too. Mr. Roberts hired better security guards and made sure they received proper training. The young security guard who had been scared at the entrance that night was now the head of security, having taken inspiration from Cooper's calm professionalism. The concert venue became known as one of the safest in town. The story of the soldier who defeated 7 bikers became a local legend. Some people even claimed the number of bikers had been 12 or 15, but Cooper always corrected them if he heard such exaggerations. 1 month after the incident, Cooper was enjoying another concert at the venue, using one of his VIP tickets. During the break, the young couple he had helped that night spotted him. They came over to thank him again. "We got married last week," the boyfriend, now husband, told Cooper happily. "After seeing how you stood up to those bullies, it gave me courage. I proposed the next day." His wife smiled and showed Cooper their wedding ring. Cooper congratulated them sincerely. As they talked, he noticed how different the concert hall felt now. People seemed more relaxed, more confident. The fear that Snake's gang had created was gone completely. Even the local biker community had changed. The remaining legitimate motorcycle clubs made it clear they didn't support bullies like Snake. They started organizing charity rides and community events, trying to improve their image and show that not all bikers were troublemakers. Snake himself was never seen at the concert hall again. Rumor had it that he had moved to another state, too embarrassed to stay in town. His famous snake tattoo had become a joke among locals. Parents would tease their children, "Behave, or the soldier will throw you like Snake." Cooper continued his work at Fort Bragg, training new soldiers in hand-to-hand combat. He often used his experience at the concert hall as a teaching example. "Your training isn't just for the battlefield," he would tell them. "Sometimes it's about protecting others, standing up to bullies, and knowing when and how to use your skills." The incident had lasting effects on everyone involved. The police had better tools to handle troublemakers. The concert hall had better security. The biker community had cleaned up its act. And Cooper? He just kept doing what he did best, staying humble, helping others, and enjoying good music when he could. As Cooper would sometimes say to his students, "The best fights are the ones you can avoid. But when you can't avoid them, make sure you finish them professionally." It was a lesson Snake and his gang had learned the hard way, and one that would be remembered in that town for years to come.